In this tutorial, we're going to look at a few ways to make selections. Photoshop offers several ways that you can select an object. Over here in our tool palette, we'll see some of the selection tools. First, we have the rectangular Marquee tool. When we select that tool, it allows us to just basically make a selection of an area. We can hit the delete button and it'll delete that area. We're going to go ahead and undo. We can also select the elliptical Marquee tool and we can choose an area that's around. We can also do an inverse selection, so we can inverse this, which will select the opposite of our original selection. Hit the delete key and it will delete everything around it. We can also change some of the feathering that we have here. For example, we have the feather tool, which allows us to change that. We'll change that to about 60, and we'll make a selection again right around this area. Inverse the selection, and we'll go ahead and hit the delete button, and we'll see a little bit more feathering here. As we increase the pixel number of our feather, we'll see a little bit better feathering effect. Well, I'm going to undo that, and in this particular picture, I want to eliminate the background of the sky here. So I have a few other tools that I can use. I want to get the magic wand tool, which is underneath the quick selection tool. Anytime that you see this triangle in the right hand corner, we notice that there's a tool underneath. So I'm going to take the magic wand tool. This is another selection tool, and remember that when making selections you want a beginning point and finally get to your goal. So with the magic wand, we see here that it's selected anything that's in a contrasting color or the similar color to the selection. I'm going to undo clear, and we'll notice here that we have a tolerance. If I decrease that tolerance down to 0 and I make the same selection, it only selects a small area. So I'm going to go down to maybe about 5, and you'll notice that the selection is not quite as good as it was before with it set at 60. So let me increase that to about 50, and we have a pretty good selection there. Okay, so the magic wand tool is a really quick and efficient way to use selection tools, but we'll notice that when we get into more detailed areas, it doesn't quite work the way that we would want to sometimes. So we're going to step back here, step back, step back, a couple more step backs, and we'll get back to our original image. Okay, we have some other selection tools as well. Under the Lasso tool, we have the regular Lasso tool, the polygonal Lasso tool, and the magnetic Lasso tool. First, let's take a look at the regular Lasso tool, and that just allows us to make a rough selection around an area. And we see how the marching ants are there in our selection. Anytime you have a marching ants going around, that is the selected area. If we hit select inverse, that will select the opposite. For example, if we undo the select inverse and we hit delete, we'll delete the image itself, but that's not what we want to do, so we want to inverse that. We'll also notice that we can feather the edge as we did before. We can change that feathering a little bit, and we can refine the edge. When we hit refine edge, this allows us to do a few things to it. We can feather the edge a little bit more. We can contract or expand our selection. We can change the radius of our selection. We can change the smooth tool a little bit. And as we notice that when we contract that, it changes the size of our selection area. I'm going to go ahead and cancel that, and actually I'm going to get another tool called the magnetic lasso tool. The magnetic lasso tool is a good choice when making selections around high contrast images. For example, In this particular image, we see that the contrast between the sky and the statue are pretty good. So we can also change the feathering, the width, the contrast. When we increase the contrast, it doesn't make as good a selection if we have already a pretty high contrast. So in this particular selection, we're going to use about 2%. Also, the frequency means the amount of points that we put along our selection. What we're going to do is we're going to go to the edge. We're going to find the edge, hold the mouse down, and then start moving along the edge. And you'll notice that the magnetic lasso tool does a really good job of selecting the edges. So we're going to come along here. You see it putting down several points. And the reason it's making such a good selection here is because, as I pointed out, we do have a high contrast between the sky and the statue. We noticed that we made a little bit of an error here, but we'll come back and we'll fix that. I get down to this corner, I'm going to release and then pick it back up. I can put some points around here to make it a little bit better, but it's doing a pretty good job on its own. I'm going to come across here and connect to the first one, and we'll see that we have our selection. Now if we go up to the select drop down menu, select inverse, and hit the delete key, we'll see that the magnetic lasso did a pretty good job for us. I'm going to go ahead and hit undo clear, come back, and I'm going to do one more selection tool today. I'm going to show you the quick mask mode. Over here in the tool palette, I'm going to go ahead and click that, and it's going to give us a green background. We'll notice that the area that's in green is the area that's the selection. I can come over here and get my brush tool, and I can increase the brush. I can actually change the brush. And change this brush here and change the size a little bit. Now I'm going to take, when I click on there, you'll see green coming up. I'm going to go ahead and undo those two brush tools, and I'm going to click here on this arrow, and I'm going to switch that to the white button, and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click in right in there. I'm also going to click over here, and we'll notice that we'll get rid of the green area. I'm going to increase the size of the brush here a little bit more. Okay, get rid of this green down on the bottom, right along this edge here. Click over to my quick mask mode. I'll see that I need to refine the selection a little bit more, so I'm going to click on there. I need to add some, so I'm going to come over here and add a little bit of green. Come over here and add a little bit right in there. Click back here. We'll see that we refined it a little bit more, but if we take our time and work with that, we're going to see that we're going to refine our edge just a little bit more, and by each time. And remember that it does take time to make a really good selection. So good luck with making selections, and have fun playing in Photoshop.